The air around Kensington Palace was still that morning. Too still. The golden gates shimmered in soft sunlight, yet behind them lay weeks of silence, whispers, and quiet heartbreak. Then, the palace doors opened. Out stepped Prince William, and beside him, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, hand in hand, eyes filled with something deeper than royal grace. The crowd froze. Not a cheer, not a murmur, just silence, the kind that carries tears, memories, and respect. What had brought them to this moment? What story lay behind those calm smiles and tearful eyes? Today, we uncover the emotion behind that day when Kensington stood still, and the world held its breath. Before we begin, if you believe real love still shines even in the hardest moments, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in hope and loyalty. This isn't just another royal story. It is a reminder of the humanity behind the crown. Now let's step through those palace gates and relive a day that touched millions. The morning light fell softly over Kensington Palace, the way sunlight sometimes rests gently on something sacred. For weeks, the palace had been quiet. Too quiet. Reporters had spoken in whispers, the public had waited with uneasy hearts. And behind those grand iron gates, something unspoken had been taking place. People began to gather before dawn. Mothers brought their children wrapped in Union Jack scarves. Elderly couples leaned on canes, recalling royal memories from years long past. Some held small flags, others held roses. But all shared the same question: would they come out together today? The palace itself seemed to breathe with them. Each window reflected the golden glow of morning, and yet behind those curtains, no one knew what waited. For weeks, rumors had swirled, stories of illness, of struggle, of change. But amid all that noise, the heart of Britain remained still, hoping for something simple, a sign of love, of strength, of unity. Cameras lined the walkways. Journalists whispered into microphones, yet no one dared speak too loudly. There was a respect in the air, not the noisy kind of curiosity that fame brings, but the quiet reverence that comes when a nation holds its breath together. A gentle breeze stirred the flags above the palace gates. Somewhere nearby, a street musician began to play a soft tune. God Save the King, slow and tender. It wasn't official, it wasn't planned. It was simply someone trying to fill the silence with comfort. And still, the doors did not open. Minutes stretched into hours, and anticipation grew thicker. Every creak, every footstep echoed through the square. The crowd shifted, cameras clicked, whispers rippled like waves. Some said, "Maybe they won't come." Others replied, "They will. They always face the people." And then, it happened. The heavy palace doors began to move. Slowly, gracefully, they opened inward. The sound was barely audible, yet to those who stood there it felt thunderous. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the birds seemed to pause mid-flight. Every heart in that crowd, young or old, royalist or skeptic, began to beat in the same rhythm. A palace aide stepped forward first, briefly glancing at the crowd, then moved aside. The great doors widened, revealing a glimpse of gold and shadow. The sunlight touched the marble floor inside like a spotlight on a stage.
And then came that impossible moment, the stillness before revelation. It's strange how silence can be louder than sound. That morning, silence became a language of its own. It said we're ready. It said we care. It said we've missed them. Somewhere in the front, a little girl whispered to her mother, "Is she coming?" The woman nodded softly, her eyes never leaving the doors. That single question echoed in every heart there. Is she coming? The wind carried the faint scent of roses and rain. The palace bells chimed once, slow, deep, ceremonial. And from the shadows inside, a familiar figure appeared. Prince William stepped forward first, his back straight, his face calm yet unreadable. The crowd gasped softly, but no one spoke. Behind him, just for a moment, a silhouette lingered in the doorway. And when Catherine appeared, radiant, serene, her hand resting lightly on his arm, a wave of emotion swept through the people. It wasn't a cheer that followed, not applause, but something purer. "Taze," tears that rolled silently down faces of strangers standing shoulder to shoulder, bound by love, by loyalty, by something only moments like this can awaken. For that was the power of silence at Kensington Palace. Not emptiness, but meaning. Not distance, but closeness. The doors had opened, the story had begun. The moment the doors of Kensington Palace opened wide, it felt as though the entire world inhaled at once. Cameras trembled in the hands of reporters. Flashes of light flickered like distant stars, and yet no one moved. No one dared to break that sacred stillness. Prince William stood first on the palace threshold, tall, steady, his gaze sweeping over the crowd before him. For a brief second, it was as if he carried the whole weight of history on his shoulders. The generations before him, the traditions behind him, and the expectations ahead of him, all resting in one quiet heartbeat. Then came her. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stepped into the sunlight. Her pale blue coat shimmered gently under the morning sky, her hand resting lightly on William's arm. She looked radiant, not because of glamour, but because of grace. Her smile was soft, fragile even, but her eyes told a story the crowd would never forget. Every lens pointed at her, but she looked not at the cameras. She looked at the people, at the faces that had waited, at the ones who had worried, prayed, hoped. You could almost feel a collective sigh ripple through the crowd, a sigh of relief, of gratitude, of love. For months, silence had surrounded her name, rumors of health, of struggle, of absence. But in that single moment, she said everything without a single word. The strength of a woman who had endured, the grace of a mother who still smiled through pain, the quiet dignity of a princess who knew that courage doesn't need to be loud. William turned slightly toward her, and in that small gesture, barely noticeable, but caught by every heart watching, he squeezed her hand. It wasn't for the cameras. It wasn't for the world. It was for her. And she looked back at him with that same knowing calm, the kind that only comes from shared storms and silent promises. A light breeze swept through the square, carrying with it the faint sound of applause, hesitant at first, then growing, soft but steady. Yet even that applause couldn't overpower the emotion in the air. Some smiled through tears. Others simply stood there, eyes glistening, as if afraid that blinking might break the spell. Among the crowd, a little boy on his father's shoulders held up a small sign with shaky handwriting. "We love you, Princess Catherine." Kate's gaze caught it. She smiled, a real smile, gentle and heartfelt, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the palace felt alive again. William and Kate began to descend the palace steps slowly. Each step felt symbolic, one of renewal, of healing, of resilience. The world had seen royal appearances before, but none quite like this. This wasn't duty. This wasn't ceremony. This was something far deeper. A couple, walking hand in hand, reclaiming light after a season of shadow. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, a small hush fell again. From the front row, a little girl stepped forward, holding a single white rose. Her mother tried to pull her back, but Kate noticed. She knelt, gracefully, and accepted the rose with a soft "thank you." For that one moment, that fleeting, fragile moment, every barrier between royalty and people disappeared. It wasn't Princess Catherine and the crowd. It was just Catherine, a woman, a mother, a wife, being thanked and thanking in return. William stood beside her, his expression filled with quiet pride. You could almost read his thoughts. We made it through. And the people could feel it too. That unspoken exchange, that shared humanity, it lingered in the air long after they turned to greet others. As the couple continued along the gates, shaking hands, exchanging nods and smiles, the energy in the air shifted. Kensington Palace was no longer a place of rumor or worry. It was a place of warmth again, a symbol that even behind centuries of tradition and ceremony, there still beats a human heart. By the time they reached the end of the walkway, the sun had fully broken through the clouds. Its golden rays spilled across the palace walls, bathing them in light. And perhaps that was a quiet miracle of that morning, not just that William and Kate had stepped out together, but that they had reminded everyone watching that love, grace, and resilience still exist, even in the quietest of silences. The sound of applause lingered long after Prince William and Princess Catherine had walked past the palace gates. It wasn't the wild cheer of a concert crowd. It was softer, steadier. the kind that carries emotion instead of noise. Even as the couple disappeared into the line of waving faces, something had changed in the air around Kensington Palace. It was as though a weight had been lifted, a quiet peace settling where worry once lived. People looked at one another, smiling through tears. Some reached for their phones to capture the moment. Others simply held it in their hearts. For those who had waited in the chill of early morning, it felt worth every second, because what they had witnessed wasn't a royal appearance. It was a reunion between a couple and their people, between hope and heartbreak, between silence and the return of faith. A journalist near the gate lowered her microphone and whispered, "That wasn't an announcement, that was a message." And she was right. In a world filled with noise and cynicism, this simple act of stepping out together, hand in hand, had reminded millions that love endures, that even behind royal walls and regal titles, there are hearts that break, heal, and find their way back to the light. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the London skyline, the image of William and Kate walking side by side filled every television screen, every headline, every feed. But more than the visuals, it was the emotion that spread, that silent unity that crossed oceans and languages. Messages poured in from across the world. Her smile gave us hope. His strength showed what love truly means. And from one viewer in a distant country, "Today, I believed in goodness again." The next morning, white roses began to appear along the palace gates, hundreds of them, tied with ribbons and handwritten notes. One read, "For the courage to stand tall even when the world watches." Another simply said, "Thank you for reminding us what grace looks like." Inside the palace, the bells chimed again, not in sorrow this time, but in gratitude. The sound floated through the gardens, over the crowd, and into the city beyond. Some said it was just a symbolic moment. Others felt it was divine timing. But for those who stood there that day, for those who heard the hush, saw the light, and felt their hearts tremble, it became something they would carry forever. Because that day, Kensington Palace wasn't just a royal residence. It was a mirror, reflecting the truth that love, no matter how tested, can still endure. William and Catherine didn't just walk out of the palace. They walked back into the world's heart. And maybe that's why people cried, not out of sadness, but because they saw themselves in that moment. The fight to stay strong, the beauty of forgiveness, the quiet power of walking forward together. As dusk settled, a soft drizzle began to fall, the kind London knows so well. The crowd slowly drifted away, leaving behind footprints on wet stone and the echo of shared emotion. The palace lights glowed faintly through the mist, standing as a silent witness to a day when history paused for love. And for once, the story wasn't about monarchy, scandal, or duty. It was about two people, two hearts, reminding the world that sometimes the grandest royal gesture is simply showing up together. As the final chords of the story fade, one question lingers. When was the last time a moment made you believe again? If this story touched your heart, let it remind you, strength isn't found in palaces or titles. It's found in love that stays, even when life grows silent. Thank you for walking through Kensington's gates with us today. If you felt the emotion of this moment, please like, share, and subscribe, not just for the story, but for the message it carries. Because in a world that often rushes past feeling, today we remembered what it means to feel deeply.